Greetings from Costa Rica and welcome to this 10-minute spiel on finding the right location for you and your family in Costa Rica. My name is Matt Rosenstiel, aka Costa Rica Matt, and my goal on this channel is to empower anyone looking to move here with information so that they can make the right decisions. Life is too short for long-winded lectures, so let's get on with this 10-minute spiel about finding the right location here. And to get to the most important part right away that I want to make, it is that Costa Rica is an incredibly diverse place. And having worked with all kinds of people moving here over the last decade, there are some common threads that really unite the people who are successful here versus the people who end up moving back home in one of those short terms, either 2, 3, or 5 years. We do see a huge number of expats come down and end up leaving the country without fulfilling their dreams and without fully relocating for the decades of their retirement that they planned. And frequently, the single reason that that happens is that they did not find the right location for their needs. This requires self-reflection. You should actually, before you're moving to Costa Rica or before you're traveling here, you should really make a job list of what you're hoping to accomplish personally and what your Costa Rica community would provide in that scenario. For a ton of people who want to move here, they may not understand just how small the vast majority of Costa Rica communities are. They may also not understand just what it's like to live in a community that is as small as only a few hundred people. And especially on the coastline where we have the constant coming and going of tourists and snowbirds and expats who only use their property during the winter, you absolutely see towns that reach an incredibly small population without too many interesting folks around at certain times of the year. So if you're hoping to move to Costa Rica and build engaging relationships, if conversation, if playing games with people, if having social interaction is extremely important, finding the right location can largely be based on that single limiting factor. In my community of Playa Junquial, I could see how a lot of people would never be able to find the level of social interaction that they personally need to be happy here. And if they were hoping to move to Costa Rica and become stress-free, healthier, really open up as an individual, that won't happen if you're not happy with the level of social interaction. So finding your own location begins with defining your priorities. And yes, if a priority for you as a human being are relationships, we can immediately begin to narrow the field of locations that you should explore. Those will be the bigger tourism and expat corridors or the bigger Costa Rican communities if you're fluent in Spanish and you have intercultural skills where you can actually bridge that sort of gap. But for most people watching my channel, you're going to be looking at places like Potrero, Flamingo, Tamarindo, Langosta, communities where you have a few thousand people living year-round as the base level of your minimal social interaction. Obviously, in the Central Valley of Costa Rica, there are also enormous communities there and much denser environments where you can find tons of interaction and not only a foreign but local community that you could definitely get into. Now, when you're actually planning trips to Costa Rica, and I say trips very deliberately, you should really consider trying to provide yourself a distinct look at your target community at multiple times of year. Of course, if you've lived in tropical climates and you sort of understand what a rainy versus dry season is, this may not apply to you. But for the average person moving to Costa Rica from anywhere north of Indiana, let's say, You really want to get the experience of what your community may look like at multiple times of year. And specifically, you need to focus on seeing it in a time of year when you plan on living here. I do see people plan vacations in the green season, May, June, July, when we've got good rains, or even August and September. They're looking at properties that they primarily plan to use in the North American winter in January and February. You should absolutely, first and foremost, try to spend time in that community that you've targeted when you would be there in the future. If you're gonna relocate and live somewhere year-round, then yes, you wanna see that location year-round, because if it's a tourism community, the population will drop significantly at low times of year. If you're here in Guanacaste or anywhere on the Northwest Pacific, it will be bone dry at certain times of year, aka March, April, and starting May. And it will be raining hard at other times of year in September and October. If you're looking at the Southern Pacific, it may look manageable and not too rainy at certain times of year, but in October, you may find the conditions to be absolutely far too much. So when you're scouting your locations, try and get that picture of what the climate will look like that's relevant to you. And not just the climate, but also those tourism patterns. Because yes, you may come to Junquillal in January, see the constant traffic of people coming and going. You might see all of the renters and the restaurants absolutely full every night of the week. And if you plan to live here year-round, you're going to be very disappointed in September when there are only a couple restaurants open and when most everybody has left the community. Finally, in scouting your location in Costa Rica, I can't emphasize enough that the quantity of time that you can spend in a location will help you on your path to success. If you're able to really dig in and get a long-term rental in a community, you're going to get a feeling for the rhythm of life that you're simply not going to be able to get if you make multiple short-term vacations to an area. You really want to try living off of the local supermarkets. You want to try what it's like to be a member of the social scene and see if it's enough for you and your needed level of social interaction. And really, you want to see every time of day, every climate of the year, what happens in the community that could be a liability to your property. Does it flood? Are there rainfall patterns that really make it unappealing for you? Are there neighbors next door that come in over the high season? Do they rent the property next door to partiers and electronic music festivals? On and on and on. The more information you have about these communities, the better decision you are going to make as a Costa Rica real estate buyer, and the greater chance you have of actually relocating and finding success here. So never, ever, ever, if you're looking for property in Costa Rica, jump over the step of exploring possible locations and finding the right place for yourself. The one exception to this rule that I do make oftentimes for people is if you're an experienced world traveler and you have just been everywhere or you've lived abroad before, then clearly you've got a better capacity to move somewhere with only seeing it once. If you're looking at your first or second or third international trip ever, you should really focus on this step before even considering buying property here in Costa Rica. Once you've found your right location, the rest of the process of buying property is fairly straightforward, and I discuss it in this 10-minute spiel. Thanks for watching.